I thought that today we could talk about the importance of hosting a live event for communities. There are a lot of folks here who are listening to us and you run coaching groups or you're doing some sort of mastermind or you want to, or you are doing some sort of an accelerator program, membership site. I've always been very community driven and I think the live event is a linchpin. It is a huge component. It doesn't need to happen often, but it's a huge component. So I thought we would talk about this a little bit today in terms of why it's so important to galvanize people together, gather people together in person, especially when you're in an online community.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is we can talk about it from both angles.
Yeah.
We can talk about it from the angle of you, the one who has a community as part of the business that you're building, because you've run those events. And then we both did You're the Brand Academy live event together. So I was
Mhm.
in that role with you, but I've also been in the same events, some of them led by you, where I'm a participant. So I think it'll be fun to talk about it from both perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have all these different levels, right? Where we have the facilitator, the person who's running the event. Then we have a co-facilitator, which is the role that you were in, and then an attendee. And both of us have been attendees at more event facilitated, obviously, for years. People ask me like, hey, what's your mindset around a live event? And if I were to sum this all up, it's all about curating a meaningful experience for people. That's it. Now, that can mean a ton of different things. Meaningful could mean that it's very didactic in nature, meaning it's very instructive. There's a lot of how-to content. There's a lot of GSD, get stuff done, or use the other S word
Mhm.
if you want to be more colorful, get things done. There is the community and networking connection piece that you can't manufacture. It doesn't happen overnight. And I'm happy to dive into that a little bit. And or to platform people in your community at these events. And I think about how am I going to create a meaningful experience for people? And I do think that they're different based on the groups that you run. We had done a Year the Brand event earlier in the year in Florida. This was for members of our Year of the Brand Academy. And these are folks we meet with every other week right now, like twice a month. But there's no cap on the amount of people we have in the group. And not everybody comes to every call. So this is a community where you have a lot of in and out, not in terms of enrollment, but in terms of who shows up. Now we do have those super students who just need to show up on every call, right? And they let us know that they're not coming, which I think is sweet. I think that's really
Mhm.
cool,
Yeah.
but it's an uncontained container.
Mm.
So you don't have as much rapport building cross member wise in the group. They're more connecting with us and it's more top down. And I hate to use that word, but that's really
Right.
what it's like. So when you have an event like that, where it's very instructive in nature, the nature of You're the Brand Academy is we teach how to content, we get things done. When we hosted that event, I was like, I can't deviate too much from what their experience is every 2 weeks. We have to have some how-to content because even if it was a great community event, I don't know everybody as well as I would in a smaller container, like in a mastermind. The programming for that event, I made very top down, like a lot of speaking sessions. We planned nearly every minute of both days. Because when you have a group of people come in and they don't know anyone, and then you don't give them something to do, the event feels very loosey goosey,
Yeah. And
right?
it could get awkward
Yeah,
for
super
them,
awkward. Yeah,
because we
yeah.
know everybody. These are the people speaking are people you and I both know. It could be easy to get lost in that. Hey, we're hanging out with our friends, there are speakers or whatever, and you forget all these other folks are like, I don't know any of these people. I don't
A
know
single
my
person.
my attendees that they've been on calls with them, but they're not hanging out with them. It's not a mastermind. And they know you and I, but they don't know the other speakers. So I think that's a very good thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about putting on an event is you want to line that event up with whatever kind of group or membership or program that you're running that you want to add a live event component to that.
Yeah, I remember 2013 was my first ever business event that I attended. It was hosted by Michael Hyatt.
Mhm.
And back then he was running a membership program called Platform University. And at the time, this was all about building your online presence, building your platform online. He's coined that phrase. And I think the membership had something like 5,000 people in it.
Well,
Right? It was a
yeah,
lower ticket, maybe
right.
$30 a month, $40 a month or something like that. And I was pretty involved in it. Like I
Mm,
decided to show up and show out. I'm going to play all out. And I remember he announced that he was hosting the event. I had missed the first one because I just couldn't make the travel work. I had joined late and I had a full-time job then. So November 2013, I went to Dallas and this was my first ever business event. Now I was pretty active in the forums. I was on all the Q&A calls and the teaching calls. I would listen on the way home from work and he would answer
mm,
some of my questions because I used to phone in instead of just be on Zoom or whatever. And they always tried to prioritize people calling in from different like channels. And so there was one stretch I probably talked to him like 2 or 3 months in a row on those calls because I just kept calling and he took the phone calls. And I went to that event. I think there were like 100 some odd people there, 120 people there. And his speakers were great. They're all household names now. Yeah, Amy Porterfield was speaking there. Stu McLaren was speaking there. You just a who's who in that online space when I was growing
mm,
up in the industry. And dude, I didn't know a single person. I did, but I didn't. So I felt
right.
that
You
pain
knew
as an
of them.
introvert. Yeah, I knew of them and they knew of me. And Ray Edwards was there and some other folks. And so I didn't always feel comfortable, but I invested in the VIP ticket where we had a little cocktail mixer before the event started. And Michael introduced himself to me. So he knew who I was. So there was that piece, but I didn't have people to hang with and kick back with.
Mm,
Right.
mhm.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to learn. I'm going to let whatever connections come and talk to them. And people somewhat know of me since I have a platform built already somewhat and I'm participating in the community. But I just remember, I just don't want people to feel this way at one of my
Yeah,
events. Now, you can't help it. If they just don't know
right.
anyone, they don't know anyone. But I'm going to give people something to do. And that's one thing that Michael did really well. There's always something to do at that event. And so I feel like the less people are familiar with you and with one another, you have to cram the programming into the event. So that's why we did You Are the Brand that way. Years ago, when I did the other You Are the Brand in Denver, where we had a lot more people there, I think there's 120 people there. I had to program every minute of the event because you can't just let 100 people decide what they're going to do.
Right.
That doesn't work. So, yeah. But that live event piece, you remember when we went to the taco bar on the
Yes.
last night
Mhm,
and we hung out with some of the attendees and they were like, you better do this again. This was great.
mhm. Yeah.
Right? Like, really? You can get all this learning. You can watch these videos. They're like, it's about the connection.
Yeah.
But you have, in year 1 or 2, you have to let the connection happen like on its own and outside of the margins. And then as the years go by, you can maybe loosen that up. And that's what I've done in our mastermind. But yeah, that's my mentality towards a live event.
What on those events, when you're thinking about them, what have you learned as to when do you schedule those? So let's say if you're launching something, do you launch with the live thing up front? Do you launch with it in the middle, 3 months, 6 months mark? Or would you say, no, wait and have that kind of the climactic end of whatever the first round through your program or offer or course or membership is? Where do you like to
Great
put?
question. Great question. I believe you should launch and host a live event within the first 6 months of any program that you promote.
Mm,
Now, if that means that your program is shorter than 6 months, you've got to do it within the first three. Don't wait till the end. Try to do it within the first three. If it's a year-long program, I schedule something twice a year, every 6 months. And the reason for that, the reason you want to do it a little bit earlier is because if you even just get a handful of people in your community to meet together halfway through your program, they will re-energize. The energy will just go to another level when they go back to your online calls after that live event
mhm.
without fail. So that's why you want to make it happen sooner than later. If you wait till the very end of your program, it feels like a graduation. It
Mhm.
feels like a culmination of, okay, I completed this program and I can move on to the next thing, which is fine if you have a next thing. But if you're relaunching the same thing or you have an ongoing need that has no end,
Yeah, that's a
that's
bad idea. You've accidentally shipped them off and
yes,
unknowingly given them in their mindset a graduation ceremony whereby they're now alumni. If you don't want them to be
correct,
alumni, be careful.
correct, correct.
Be
So
careful.
yeah, if someone's running a 6-month mastermind, I always tell them, get everybody together within the first 90 days, if you can, right? Or 120 days, just 4 months within the
Mhm.
six, get them together, do whatever you need to get them together. There's nothing that can replicate the energy infusion that will come if you're able to do that, right? Now, that said, you have to run the live event well, which is a completely different topic, which we
Right,
might be
right.
able to
Yes.
talk about
Right.
on a different episode. But I just want to share that mentality around it because then you truly build a community, not a dictatorship.
Mm.
Most group coaching programs, they're run like a dictatorship. It's very top down. The facilitator is the star and everyone relates to them. But when you have these live events, it allows some breathing room for them to go cross men to one another. And that's a healthy community, right? The mentality around that is that if I, now I can't make this happen, but my mentality is like, if someone has just one meaningful experience at the event, it's probably a success.
Mm.
And then at the event, you can ask people, hey, what was one meaningful interaction or experience that you had here? And it opens up the floor. And now it gets their minds jogging and be like, you know what? That was really good. I really appreciated that side conversation that I had with Robbie.
Mm.
And what they'll all say is that I appreciated this conversation or that conversation.
Yeah.
Some will say that particular teaching point in the keynote was really transformative, but a lot of them, more than you might think, will say it's more about the side conversations.
Yeah.
And now you have the makings of community, but you can't engineer that in year one. You've got to let it breathe and you've got to let things unfold from there.
I'd be curious your thoughts on what is different about a standalone live event because you have done those in the early days. I know you did some breakfast things. That it was just the event because some may be listening. Ooh, I was thinking about a live event, and I'm just curious your thoughts. Standalone live event compared to a live event like we're talking about, either as part of a membership or a mastermind group. What's different about those?
Yeah, I think a standalone live event, you have to have some different expectations because the people who are coming are going to have very different expectations. If you're going to a standalone live event, whether it's a smaller event, a workshop, a, a mid-sized event, maybe like 50 to 100 people, or a very large event, talking about the thousands, you'll see that the expectation level for each of those events is very different. If it's a smaller event, people are probably going to expect that they're going to get more quality time with each other, some face time with you as the organizer, and so on and so forth. But if there's no pretext to the event and there's no post text to the event, there's no real interactions happening before or after the event, it just is what it is. Likely people are going to think of that as I need to walk away with something really actionable, really practical that I can apply. And I'm going to just say business because all of us are listening to a business podcast right now. Right.
Right.
So they're going to want that kind of takeaway. If it's a networking event, which most people cringe at, most folks are not going to expect that they're going to have a meaningful interaction at a quote unquote networking event because they think it's just going to be a party where people hand out business cards. So what I would say from the event organizer standpoint, if I'm going to do a standalone event, it might be standalone to the attendees, but it cannot be standalone in my mind. I have to have some sort of a plan as to
Mhm.
why I'm getting people together and doing this. Now, I think one short-sighted way to look at it is I'm going to get clients. I'm going to host this event and get clients. That is totally valid, but it's a little short-sighted because if that becomes one of your lead gen strategies, you have to do it all over again.
Mm.
And you got to do it again and again. So when I advise people on their live events, and I've advised a lot of people on this, They come out with the House of Fire, Robby and I. I want to do 4 events a year. I'm like, hey, pump the brakes. Let's do one and see how you feel afterwards.
Yeah.
Because if you do 4 a year, once a quarter, that thing turns around super quick,
Oh, yeah.
super
Yep.
quick.
Yeah. I remember telling people back in the day in the ministry days, you get these young dudes that are super excited about starting a church and they're all in a race to Sunday morning. And we would tell them, hey, once you fire that thing up, it's going to show up every 7 days for the rest of your life. So don't be
Yep.
too eager because once you say yes, if you say yes to 4 quarters, by the time you recover from that first one, you're going to be 2 weeks behind planning the second one.
Yeah. And then I tell them, you've got to demonstrate that you can pull. Can you pull people to a live event? Do you have the pull for it? Do you have the influence? Do you have the rapport with an audience that they will get on a plane and fly to you? And are these the same people that came from event number 1 who are coming to event number 2, or are they different people? See, you got to consider these things. Those are
Right.
two very different
Yes.
projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Because getting a new audience 4 times a year, if you're not planning on bringing the exact same people, that's a whole nother really
Yeah.
hard challenge
Yeah.
to overcome.
And if they're standalone, what's the attraction to the event? Is it that they're learning a framework? Do you have to fill seats by getting great speakers and name recognition? Because good luck, that's going to cost a lot of money. You're going to still have to do a lot of marketing around it. I'm shocked at how many people think that just having one big name will draw a crowd. It might the first time because you have a big name, but that means the second time you've got to have just as big a name or a bigger name. And it's just a prison of your own making. And now that can happen. But if you're going to do that, I'd say go gangbusters and go for the multiple thousands of people to an event. That's just the way to do it. But if you're going to do it small, you're caught in no man's land because you got these big expenses with speaker fees and travel and all that sort of stuff. And then you're not charging a lot of money, or maybe you are, but that sales process is very long if you charge a lot of money, right? So you've got to pick your pack in that regard. I've gone to some masterminds that were several $1,000s where it was 2 to 3 days in a cool exotic location, and they limited it to 30 or 40 people. And they had some pretty well-known entrepreneurs and speakers there presenting. And I said, yes. And a lot of those experiences were really good because you had FaceTime with everybody there, and you could really get to know a handful of people over those 2 or 3 days and have these shared experiences in an exotic location. But I was always interested, what would they do on the last day? And they would try to sell the next one. I was like, oh man, you got a next one? When is that? In 4 months? Oh, good God, I wouldn't want to be you. That's a lot of work. 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to do one in the fall, one in the spring. That still turns around really fast. And so they would ask us to sign up. We get a discount ticket at the event if we signed up. And I was like, I don't know. I'm pretty tired. I'm not sure if I can commit to this next April. So even though I had a great experience as an attendee, you want to keep your options open.
Yep.
But if they offered a mastermind ongoing virtually every 2 weeks or once a month for 6 months after the event, heartbeat, I would have said yes.
Right. Yeah.
So you want to have a plan if you're having a standalone event in terms of what does that, not just your business model or the monetization path, but what does the journey look like for the person who comes to that event? Do they stay engaged with you or the people who were at the event in some way, shape, or form, or not? And you don't want to fight human nature. It is like we had this WhatsApp thread for our mastermind. And I've done this now so many times, probably 8 or 9 times, these mastermind retreats. The WhatsApp chat for everyone who's attending will be a house of fire for the week leading up to the event, at the events, and about a week after, and then it just dies. And that's exactly what happened in the last 2 weeks. It's just dead.
Yep.
And it's fine. You can't fight human psychology. Just let it be what it is. I'll give it an example. This sounds so odd, but years ago, I went to Paris, probably 13 years ago. Okay. And I went for a wine tasting, and this bottle of wine was so good. I was like, I want this bottle. I want to take this home. I was getting married at the time. And
Mhm.
so my ex and I, we were talking about how this bottle of wine was so good. And so we asked the sommelier, hey, where can we get this bottle of wine? In his French accent,
Mm.
speaking English to everybody, he said something along the lines of all wine in France is grown differently than the rest of the world because we can't really irrigate. We can't actually water, right? It's like regulation. So he said that if you have even the same vineyard, the same type of grape from the same vineyard, it's in the same case of wine, this bottle will taste different from this one because the grapes that were all mixed together, some of them are on this side of the hill where the sun shines, and others are
Mhm.
taken from the back side of the hill where there's no sun, but they're all mixed together. And you don't know if you got more of that flavor or the other grape. And so what we say is don't focus on the bottle of wine, focus on the memories that you made with the people you had the wine with. And I love that example. I've always taken that approach to these live events. Don't focus on the WhatsApp thread. Don't focus on the videos and the teaching. Don't focus on all these external things that we all know are going to fade away anyway. Did they have a great experience in Effingham? Did they have a great experience in Detroit, in Charleston, in Nashville? Like these are some of the cities that we've gone to over the years, right? What was that in Washington, D.C.? We just enjoyed that experience while we were there at the experience.
Mhm.
And now that we have 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, a Zoom call afterwards that is in my mastermind, we can enjoy those moments together.
Last question to wrap up. So I know you've done, I would love your thoughts, maybe this a tip, trick, tactic, hack on when you've done live events that have been a part of a community, but then popped one of the doors open so that people that aren't a part of that program can also come. So it's a little bit of a hybrid. I would love for you to just share just for a minute why you've done it that way and how that makes the event a little easier knowing that you've got some seed money, so to speak.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll have an event that is for a particular community. And then I will say, we have a limited number of tickets to the general public. So if you want to bring a friend, bring them. If it's somebody who used to be part of the community, who maybe dropped out, but they want to re-engage, but just for that event, they can come in that way, which is totally fine with me. I'm not like, oh, you left my community, you're blacklisted for it's dumb. Like sometimes people just don't have the schedule or the time or whatever. In when it's a program based event, like you or the brand, I'm cool with that. When it's a mastermind where people are investing a little bit more money for the discussion, for the closer group, I only allow people to bring their spouses. Their spouse still has to pay. And if one of our old mastermind members asks me and reaches out because they know the retreat's happening, they ask if they can come because they have the intent to rejoin us later, then I'm okay with that. Right. But I don't want somebody who was in a mastermind 3 years ago to show up with these guys and gals. And they're like, who's this stranger? Right. I try to guard that. That's cool as well, though, Robby. Your wife, Kelly, came to our mastermind meetup several weeks
Mhm.
ago. And there there is a rhyme and reason, and it's not like everything's super tactical and planned out in my mind, but I can see a lot of benefits for that. Number one, it's just going to benefit you for her to know who you're hanging out with and to understand a little bit more of your world because you guys do very different things. And I think that if you have a stronger base at home in your personal life, you're going to do better in business. So if we have a curated community there and people feel safe bringing their spouse, their significant other, I'm good with that. And we've never had everyone bring their spouse. Now, if all of a sudden one retreat they wanted to, I'd be like, hey, we have a head count limit. Like we can't, this is going to change the nature of the event. I'll limit it to maybe five extra people that can count. However, also, it's really helpful for the group to hear a newcomer's perspective on how good they actually have it.
Mhm.
right? Because we all, it's human nature. We all take things for granted. Oh, we're doing another retreat. Okay, here, I've been Mike's mastermind for 5 years. Yeah, you have. And we're going to get bored of each other. It's just like a marriage, right? You got to
Mhm.
spice it up once in a while. And that's not why I do it, right?
Right.
But it's a side benefit of it
Yeah.
where
Positive
people
side
come in.
effect.
Yeah, like, this is amazing. You guys are all super connected. I just heard the conversations. You all made me feel so welcome. And the community here is, oh, what, this is actually, yeah, you know what? I
Oh, yeah.
forgot, but this is
Yeah.
actually
This
pretty
is
good.
not normal.
Yeah, this is not normal. So there's a touchy example, but you're married to somebody for 20 years or whatever, and then they get back in shape and they start getting some looks at the bar or the restaurant. You're like, hey, wait a second. That's mine. She's mine
Yeah.
or he's mine. And but
Yeah.
in a good way, it
Mhm.
makes you realize what you have. That's not a bad thing. You want people to understand, man, it's bad out there.
Mhm.
You got it pretty good. So yeah, so those are just some thoughts around live events. We can dive into a little bit of the programming on a future episode or whatnot. But I think the point I want to drive home is that if you want to have a great community, even if you're doing 90% of what you're doing online, that last 10% meeting live can actually have a 90%
Mhm.
effectiveness on your community. And so it's worth it. Now you want to be smart. Don't overspend. Don't go out of budget. Don't go crazy. Understand the kind of community you're running and understand the kind of requisite matching live events. But it can galvanize communities. Every time I coach people on running masterminds or coaching groups, I've told them, if you want this thing to succeed, you need to have a live meetup. You need to. I don't care if you don't want to do it. That's just the name of the game. You got to do it.
Yep.
So find a way. Yeah. Cool. All right. That'll do it for today's episode. Robbie, thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Check out all the show notes here below. We'll have some links out to the various resources, other resources that I have around live events. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating or review. It helps us get word out about the show, or just share it with somebody. It means a lot to us if you share it with somebody and let them know, hey, don't do your next live event without listening to this episode. It can help you save you a lot of headache. All right, till next time, be well. We'll see you here on the next episode of the show.